Good afternoon, participants. Thank you all for joining for the today's special talk organized by Coimbatore Management Association and DJ Academy for Managerial Excellence. Today we have with us Shri K. Vaitheeswaran, co-founder Again Drinks, and the topic for today is things to keep in mind while starting up. So now let me invite CMA President Shri Jaikumar Ramdas to address the gathering.
Thank you, Sri Raman. Good afternoon to all. It's my pleasure on behalf of Coimbatore Management Association and DJ Academy for Managerial Excellence to welcome you all to this meeting. Our special welcome to our speaker, Sri K. Vaitheeswaran, co-founder and chief executive officer of Again Drinks, Bengaluru. And it's a very interesting topic, things to keep in mind while starting up. Because I feel this is a golden period of startups, which started off in the days of Mr. K. Vaitheeswaran the years back in 1990s, and now it's really matured. And I heard there are about 60,000 startups in India today, and out of which about 90 are unicorns, which means that they have crossed $1 billion in valuation. So that's nice to hear. And I also know that Indian startup ecosystem is the third largest in the world in terms of numbers as well as in terms of unicorns. And we are also aware of the fact that almost 90% of the startups fail and only 10% of them succeed. So that is a lesson to be learned, which I'm sure our speaker will be briefing us today. And for the information of our speaker and the students, Coimbatore Management Association is one of the oldest associations formed 68 years ago. It's even older than the All India Management Association. And we have had some distinguished past presidents who have nurtured this association over a period of time. And one of the bigger programs that we have is going to happen next week is a National Management Day, wherein we'll be recognizing entrepreneurs and professionals in their field of vocation. And we also have a Monday Musings program running for the last decade. This happens on every Monday, wherein we invite a speaker to speak about a topic of significance. And we always have more than 100 participants for that meeting. So Coimbatore Management Association has been exceedingly active in various departments, and it consists of professionals, entrepreneurs, institutions, and students who hold this association. So with these few words, we look forward to a very interesting session, sir. And with these few words, I welcome you all to this afternoon program. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So before we hand over the session to speaker, let me introduce our speaker for the day. Shri K. Vaitheeswaran is a serial entrepreneur and the co-founder of the exciting range of beverages Again Drinks. He's also the author of the best-selling book Failing to Succeed, the story of the India's first e-commerce company, and is widely hailed as the father of e-commerce in India. He is an internet industry veteran who pioneered the e-commerce industry in India when he co-founded India's first pure-play online retail company, fabmart.com, later rebranded as indiaplaza.com in 1999. He evangelized Indian e-commerce, scaled up the operations, built a strong team, raised funding from leading venture capital firms, created a strong digital brand in India from the scratch, and ran the operations as the CEO of Indiaplaza till 2013. No Indian B2C company has survived independently for such a long period so far. In 2002, he co-founded FabMall, the world's first online to offline hyper-local omni-channel grocery retail company. FabMall grew to become India's largest supermarket chain, and in 2006 was acquired by Aditya Birla Group, and later he rebranded as the More chain of stores. The More chain of supermarkets has been acquired by Amazon in 2013. He has advised global brands like Deloitte, Diageo, and the Tata Group in their digital initiatives. He is well known in the Indian startup scene and also advises several technology and consumer ventures. He is also a member of the review committee for the Government of India's prestigious project, government eMarketplace since 2016. Shri K. Vaitheeswaran is a TEDx speaker and speaks regularly on entrepreneurship, internet, e-commerce, and consumer market related subjects at various industry forums and leading educational institutes across India, including the IITs and IIMs. He's a visiting faculty at IIM Bengaluru, and he is also the member of the Industry Advisory Board of the International Institute of Information Technology, Bengaluru. He served on the CII National Committee for Marketing for the period of 2012 to 2013, and on the e-commerce committees of Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Internet and Mobile Association of India, and the Retailers Association of India, and is currently a chartered member of TAI Bengaluru. Shri K. Vaitheeswaran holds an electronics engineering degree from the Government College of Tirunelveli. He began his career with Murugappa Electronics in the year 1985, part of Murugappa and Parry Group. And then he spent a decade in Wipro from 1989 to 99, where he held various positions in sales, marketing, and business planning before launching his entrepreneurial journey. He's a voracious reader, keen sports enthusiast, and was a registered umpire in the Karnataka State Cricket Association for a few years. His favorite pastime is to watch Test cricket, listen to Ilayaraja songs, and enjoy the Liverpool football matches. He lives in Bengaluru with his wife and son and tweets at Vaithik. So with this brief introduction, now I hand over the session to today's speaker.
Thank you, sir, for that introduction. What I realize is it's not a brief introduction. I must make it briefer. I hope I'm audible and visible to everybody.
Yeah, perfect.
Very well, sir. Yeah.
Okay, great. So, today's topic is things to keep in mind while starting up. And I thought it's an interesting topic, and like the gentleman earlier mentioned, because startups are becoming so popular, across the country and every day growing by leaps and bounds, the number of people who are getting attracted to becoming an entrepreneur is huge, and it's a very good thing for India, certainly for the economy. But because a lot of people who are coming and starting to become entrepreneurs these days are very young people, primarily early days out of college, as opposed to people like us who became entrepreneurs after many, many years of experience. All the people, Coimbatore is one city which is the hub of entrepreneurship in India. But most people who are there running their own businesses would have started either as part of their family or in very early days. But today, entrepreneurship means a very different thing. People from very middle-class families coming out of college and starting up. And the risks of entrepreneurship are very high. Like somebody just mentioned, more than 90% of the startups are failing. In fact, the numbers are much higher, not 90, probably more than 95% will fail. And while you cannot change those statistics too much, I think it's important to keep a few rules in mind before you go down this journey, just to improve the chances of success. The reality is that there are no guarantees, and it's impossible to predict which startup will succeed and which will not succeed. But a few things to keep in mind will always be helpful. So I thought I will share that, especially I'm sure with a whole lot of students listening, probably many of them wanting to go and do their own startups. So the first thing that I want to share, a very important point, is a lot of young people come to me and said, I have this great idea to do a startup. And the normal thing I tell them is an idea is worthless, because you may think that I have this great idea, I'm going to do a startup. I think an idea fundamentally sounds like an exciting thing, but it is actually worthless. What is more important is, are you solving a problem? And that's the first thing you must check. Because anybody can come up with an idea. I mean, as you're walking along, you'll come up with an idea saying, I can do this, I can do that. Those ideas in itself will not work. You have to go back and find, okay, I have this idea, but am I solving a problem for a customer? That's the first thing that you must keep in mind. And most young people are not able to differentiate between the excitement of having a great idea and the practicality of solving a problem. But if you don't do this important review on your own, you may go down the wrong path, because very quickly you'll realize that the excitement of the idea is only with you, but the customers are not caring about it enough. And hence, please ask yourself, am I solving a problem? And the answer to it must be yes. If it's no, then the idea in itself doesn't work. So the next thing you must do once you think you have a solution to a problem is you should be able to define the problem very specifically. If you think you're solving a problem, define the problem, and you should be able to write it in just a few words. The problem can't be a very long one. I mean, in a single sentence, you should be able to define a problem. And in a single sentence, you must be able to define your solution to that problem. If you're not able to do that in two simple sentences, then I think you're still not solving the problem enough. In other words, it still requires a whole lot of discussion. So the thumb rules are I'll keep giving you those thumb rules. If you just note it down, I think it'll be very helpful to many of you. The first thing I told you is idea versus problem. The second thing is, once you think you're solving a problem, you should be able to write it down, write the problem in a single sentence, write the solution in a single sentence. And I think that's a very important step. The third thing you must do is, once you're able to do that, think whether you're solving an existing problem or you're solving a new unique problem. Are you solving an existing problem with a new solution? Or are you solving an existing problem with a similar solution which other people have already done? And there's nothing wrong. And the reason I'm saying this is, again, many young entrepreneurs believe that they have to come up with what is called an innovative idea. And their definition of an innovative idea means it is something that nobody's done before. Actually, if you spend too much of time thinking on what has never been done before, you may never start up, because there are not too many things that it's not that it is not possible. And certainly once in a while, people do come up with an idea that's or a problem or a solution that is unique and never been done before. But the reality is, most startups essentially are new solutions to existing problems, or a superior solution to an existing solution in the market. Those two really comprise over 95% of the startups. And so if you're giving a solution to an existing problem or coming up with a solution which is similar to an existing solution, there's nothing wrong, as long as you're able to check one thing to check. Obviously, if it's a new problem and a new solution, then everything is unique. So that's a different thing. But if you're giving an existing solution or a solution similar to what is existing in the market, then the only thing to ask yourself, and this is the next point, is how is your solution superior to an existing solution in the market? There's no point coming up with a solution that is exactly what other people are offering. Because if other people are offering a product or a service as a solution, and you go offer a similar product or a service, then it's very unlikely that customers will buy from you, simply because there's already somebody offering a similar service. So the question to ask is, I'm offering a similar solution, that's fine. How is my solution superior to an existing solution? And for this, I have defined a test, and whatever I'm telling you is actually all described in greater detail in my book, Failing to Succeed. So if any of you are interested further, you could read that for more ideas on this, on each of those topics. But basically, the way to figure out whether your solution is superior to an existing solution is you apply what is called a simple test. I call it the BFC test, right? The BFC test is very simple. Is your solution compared to an existing solution better, faster, cheaper. Only three things. Now, when you think very carefully, you think of any company in the world, any company in the world. It could be a startup in Bangalore. It could be a startup in Silicon Valley. It could be a large engineering company out of Coimbatore, or it could be a global multinational like a Google or a Microsoft. It doesn't matter. All these companies do only three things. They make products or services which are better, faster, cheaper than competition. That's all they do. And you know, the type of industries I gave you, there could be another example. You could be running what is called a small tea shop, a small tea kada in Coimbatore, or a large rocket launching solution system, a system that launches satellites and rockets, or a tea kada in Coimbatore. You're still doing only three things. Is your product or service better, faster, cheaper than competition? This is the key. And once you figure out, the way to compare this is you must be able to do at any point of time, tick two of those three boxes. Ideally, your solution must be better and faster and cheaper than competition. But in an ideal world, it's very difficult to achieve that, because remember, the competition is also doing the same thing. It is not that competition is keeping quiet. If you're making a solution better, faster, and cheaper, they're also working to make their product or solution better, faster, and cheaper. So you must always strive to see, can I tick two of those three boxes, which means your solution, if you're coming up in the market, is my solution better and faster, or better and cheaper, or faster and cheaper? Obviously, if you tick all three, which is a very rare case, then you have what is called a very exciting startup. But even otherwise, you must make sure you have at least two of those boxes ticked when you launch, and make sure two is always there. Can you launch with one? I think it's a very risky thing. If you're launching only with one box ticked, it's unlikely that you will find enough traction. Okay, so now just to quickly sum up, these are the fundamental conditions for you to see if you're ready to do a startup. Are you finding a solution to a problem? Is your solution new or existing? If it's existing, is it better, faster, and cheaper than competition? These are the three starting points. The next thing you must do is, once you define that your solution meets the BFC test, you have to now look at customers. You have to now find out, okay, I'm solving this problem. But sometimes what happens is, as an entrepreneur, you are very excited by what you're doing. So you believe you're solving a problem, right? Now, in many cases, it so happens that you may be genuinely solving a problem that the customer is not yet understood there is a problem. But once you announce it, people like it and say, okay, this was a great problem. I didn't know about it, got solved. So for example, pulling out a phone today and pressing an app and calling a taxi, right? Like an Uber. Before they came, was it a problem? It wasn't a problem, right? I mean, nobody knew there was a problem. But once it came, we took to it and we realized, yes, there was a latent problem at the back of convenience. The ability to stand wherever you are in the world, press a button on your phone and a cab comes and picks you up. Suddenly there's a convenience. So there was a solution to a convenience problem, but we didn't realize it. Another interesting thing I'll tell you is, all of us, whenever we have time, we'll pull out our phone and do swiping, right? But till the iPhone came, people were pressing buttons. Nobody knew there was a problem. It's only when Apple came and said, look, I think you're wasting time. You must start swiping. It's more convenient. People suddenly realize, yes, it's convenient. So a lot of those problems are not known to be problems to the customer. So it could happen that you're doing that, but in most cases, it won't be the case. So therefore, if you're finding a solution which you believe is superior to competition, the next thing you must do is find customers for whom you're solving this problem. And that's the key. There's no point solving a solution, but there's nobody having a problem. right? Then it's not something that's going to scale. So find a solution to a problem and find customers who have the problem. And those customers you must be able to define. If it's a B2B business, which is a business to business, you should be able to define your customers with sharpness. If it's a B2C business, you must be able to define your consumers with reasonable sharpness. This is the profile of my consumer, and it's very important to do that. Once you do that, you have to find out whether you will find solutions to these customers who will come back and use your solution more than once, which means will they do it on a repeated manner? Will they do it again and again? And that's the key. Now, this entire thing from the beginning to the end is essentially the foundation on which startups are done. Find a solution to a problem, make sure that your solution is superior to other competitive solutions, make sure that you define the customer who wants the solution, and make sure that the customers are able to come back and use your solution repeatedly. These are the things that in the market jargon and in your business school books, you would read as a product, a market fit, and a competition analysis. This is exactly what you read. So when you do your BFC test, essentially you're doing a competition analysis. When you're defining your customer, you're defining the target audience. And when you find a customer who comes back and buys it regularly, you're defining your repeat rate. Right? And I'm sure you have read about this in your college, in your course. So if you do this, you have the base of a startup. After that, it's a matter of simple details, a few important things. And I'm going to share some of them. Is it always essential that you need to have a lot of co-founders, or can you launch a startup on your own? There is no rule like that, right? There are single co-founder startups have succeeded. Multiple co-founder startups have failed, right? So there is no rule, but generally it is useful to have a co-founder because sometimes a lot of those decisions that you're taking through strategy, you need somebody to talk to. Also, good to have a set of co-founders who bring different skills to the table. So you may be a marketing person. Good to have a co-founder who's a operations person. Always useful to have another co-founder who's a finance person. Then you have a different set of skills in the startup table. It's impossible for one person to be equally skilled in all areas, and hence sometimes it is useful, but it is not an essential thing that you need co-founders. Sometimes if you're ready to start on your own, you can. There's no need to wait for somebody. The only condition that I'm saying is that if you're putting in a co-founder, make sure that you have a relationship with the co-founder in some manner. A relationship in the sense that it's a person with whom you've studied together, you've been friends with, you've been a competition, you've been a colleague, you worked in the marketplace, you had some acquaintance, was your college mate, classmate, batchmate, hostel mate. Any such relationship is fine because it's important to know how the co-founder will respond to multiple situations. And that will be well known if you have interacted with that person for a reasonable period of time. Never go and locate a co-founder you have never met in your life. That is a big risk. In fact, there are many startup groups and mentor groups who keep saying that come to me and I'll help you find a co-founder. Those are very dangerous things. You should never hire a co-founder. A co-founder is known to you. You've worked with that person. You've been in touch with the person and together you're starting. But don't go start a company and then look for a co-founder, especially somebody you don't know. That's a condition that I would be very insistent upon. Otherwise, you're increasing the risks of failure. But the more important thing than having a co-founder is to hire the right team when you start. A set of people who will help you grow your vision. And there, the simple rule that I have is Try and hire people who are smarter than you, right? It's a very important rule of hiring. It's also the biggest challenge because it's not easy. I mean, how do you hire people who are smarter than you? In many cases, the ego of the entrepreneur does not allow him or her to even assume that there'll be people smarter there. The reality is that most people are smarter than us. You should be able to locate them. Now, why do you need people smarter than you? Because you're the entrepreneur, you're the founder, you're the CEO, you have the vision. Why do you need people smarter than you? The reason you need people smarter than you is because if you don't have people who are smarter than you inside the room, then all the burden and the risks of getting the decisions right is on your shoulders. And that is a huge risk to carry. But if you have people who are smarter than you, even as the founder, if you announce some plan or strategy that has gaps or holes, a smart person will have the ability to speak about those gaps, explain to you the risks, and allow you to take a better decision. Smart people help you take the right decision. People who are not smarter than you will simply go with any decision you take, and hence the risks of being correct are very high. Always needs to be on your shoulder. That's a risk not worth taking. The next important point, what about funding? In fact, today most startups are focused on capital raising, funding. In fact, funding has become a bigger industry than startups itself. So the question you have to ask is, how much capital do I need? When should I raise funding? The rule that I have learned is that fundraising is not easy. It's not even fun. It's actually quite painful. And you must only raise funds for growth. A lot of startups make the mistake, they raise funds to pay for the bills. But what you should do is you should make sure that your product or service, when you sell, is always sold at a positive gross margin. Once you sell a product or a service at a positive gross margin, what you're essentially doing is saying that I am selling this at a profit. Now, if I could scale this business, I'm likely to make so much of money, but I need money to grow. So you can go to an investor and say, would you help me provide the capital to grow? This is called growth capital. The other thing you can do is you sell a product, but you sell the product itself as a loss, and then go to an investor and say, I'm selling this product or a service, but I'm not able to make money. I will make money on it later, but today will you fund those losses? You may find an investor for this, but to me, that's a very, very risky business to fund. And any investor who's funding that a business is either unaware of the risk or will ask you so much of the business that it makes no sense for you to do it. So never raise money to fund product or service losses. Always raise money for growing the business, not for selling the product at a loss. Because if you're selling the product at a loss, you're still not ready, which means your analysis earlier, the better, faster, cheaper analysis has gone wrong. And because your better, faster, cheaper analysis has gone wrong, you're not able to get the value that you wanted to do. And hence, that's the rule. So now that you've discussed people, you've discussed co-founders, you've discussed capital, you've got the most things that are in place to do a startup. So now in the last two things that I wanted to mention. Can everybody do a startup? Is everybody ready to be an entrepreneur? Broadly, the answer is yes. Anybody can be an entrepreneur. So it's not that entrepreneurs are born or you study for it. Anybody can be an entrepreneur. But the reality is most people don't become entrepreneurs. And the reason they don't become entrepreneurs, they're not made to be an entrepreneur. So the question you must ask is, am I ready to be an entrepreneur? I think here's what I have, again, another simple thing. You have to ask yourself two questions. Ask yourself, are you a brave person? And listen to the answer. Who do you? You're asking yourself. but you must be able to ask this question of yourself and listen to the answer carefully. Am I a brave person? Generally, the answer will be yes, because that's what we want to hear. We all think we are very brave. So if you ask yourself, the answer will be yes, I'm a brave person. The next question you must ask is, am I a stupid person? And listen to the answer very carefully. Because most people who are very smart do not start up, right? I mean, who in their right minds, using their head, working for a nice company and getting a nice salary, growing regularly, getting promotions, why would you go start up, right? You need to be extremely stupid to do that. Now, if you're a stupid person, the third question you must ask is, are you brave and stupid at the same time? Here, you can't have a compromise. You can't say, I am brave but not stupid. I am stupid but not brave. Because if you're only one of the two, you're likely to fail. You need to be brave enough to start up and stupid enough to start up at the same time. In my book, I've defined this as saying that, are you brupid? The word that I've used is you must be brupid enough to start up. Only brupid people start up. No normal, sane person starts up. So ask yourself, am I brave? Am I stupid? And if the answer to both the questions are yes, then you are ready to start up. Now we're coming to the characteristics of an entrepreneur. And if the answer to these two is yes, and you're ready, I'm going to give you a list of 7 things that an entrepreneur needs to bring to the table to start up. And it is not money, it is not hard work, it is not sincerity. All that is a given. If you're not sincere, if you're not working hard, anyway, you're not going to succeed. So it doesn't matter. But here are 7 things. There are 7 things that a genuine entrepreneur brings to the table. And these 7 things are mind, body, heart, soul, blood, sweat, tears. These are the 7 things that you bring to the table, right? It's not sincerity, it's not hard work, it's not smart work, it's not capital, nothing. All of that is a matter of detail because they're common to any business. What differentiates, distinguishes an entrepreneur from others is the ability to bring mind, body, heart, soul, blood, sweat, and tears. Entrepreneurship is a very hard thing. It can be a very lonely journey. If you read my book, Failing to Succeed, you'll also know that it's also a difficult journey, especially in India. And unless you're able to bring all these 7 things to the table, very unlikely that you will succeed. So these essentially are all the things that I wanted to list today and tell you things to keep in mind while starting up. Now, here's the last point. Does it mean that if I do all of this, I will succeed? The answer is no. The statistic still is that more than 95% of startups will fail. You may do all of this. You'll find a solution to a product. Your solution will be superior to competition. You'll have great co-founders. You'll hire a great team. You'll raise growth capital. You'll bring all the 7 things to a table. You're a very brave and stupid man, but you may still lose. And because the most defining thing for a successful entrepreneur is what is called timing. Some people call it timing, some people call it luck, some people call it fate, some people call it destiny, but it doesn't matter. Beyond all of this, there is something outside our control which determines success. And that is not in our hands. It is not in any book of entrepreneurship. It is not something that you can order online on Amazon. Either you have it or you don't. Now, how will you find out if you have the luck or the fate or the destiny to succeed? You can't. You have to only start up and find out. Only after you start up, after a few years of hard work, you'll realize, yay, I was very successful, or you'll realize, okay, my startup didn't work. But there is no other way. You can't find out in advance. So if you meet all the other things that I told you, then you should go and start up and figure out whether it works for you or not. For some people, it will work. For most people, it will not work, right? That's what makes entrepreneurship so exciting. And one of the things that I go and tell people, because, one of my first startups went into significant failure. is I realized there are so many people, young people starting up. And while it is important for them to listen to inspirational stories of success, it's more important for them to know of stories of failure. Because if 10 people start up, 9 will fail. 1% will succeed. So, if you keep listening to the stories of success, you'll think everybody will succeed. The reality is most people won't. So you should be prepared. If you do your best, you put your mind, body, heart, soul, blood, sweat, and tears. If it works, it's fine. If it doesn't work, it's still fine. At least you started up. Having the courage to start up in itself is victory. Which is why when people ask me what is a good ratio for startups to succeed, I have determined this formula over the years, and I'm going to share this as the last thing to you. And the formula is very simple. 99% of startups will fail. 100% of entrepreneurs will succeed. Which means your startup may fail, but as an entrepreneur, you had the courage to start up. The courage to say, I am going to walk a different path. I'm going to do something different from what I've seen my other people, my family, my friends, my elders doing. Instead of just working, I'm going to try and create something of my own. The courage to throw away what is job security, the courage to take the risk and walk down a path of your own choosing, and the courage to take risks and be brave enough to start up is success. The startup may fail, but as an entrepreneur, you will succeed. So never ever forget. This is the formula for entrepreneurs that I always say. 99% of startups will fail. 100% of entrepreneurs will succeed. That's all I wanted to share with you. Thank you so much. I guess we have some time. If you have any questions, happy to answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Vaitheeswaran, as you want me to call you.
Sure, yes.
So nice listening to you, sir. Of course, experience speaks volumes, people say. So you proved it right. Sir, let me set the ball rolling. You said, of course, there are many rules that normally the entrepreneurs should consider before plunging into the entrepreneurship or before starting up any business for that matter. Many times the products or the services do fail in the market, maybe because the entrepreneurs think ahead of time. Okay? For example, in your own case, please correct me if I'm wrong. In your own case, you started off e-commerce well ahead of the rest of the players in the market.
Yes, yes.
So did you think ahead of time, which was not accepted by the potential customers at that point of time?
Yeah, so, sometimes the customers also have to be ready for something. The market has to be of reasonable size. In fact, in my book, I don't know how many of you have read the book, but there's a specific section where I've dealt with this question that you've asked. The common word that everybody uses in the industry is first mover advantage. I am of the belief that the real word is first mover disadvantage, right?
Okay.
Especially in the technology field, being first is actually a disadvantage because you're spending a lot of time and effort trying to understand the challenges of a new industry or an area or a domain and solving the big problems. And once the big problems are solved, somebody can come much later and walk faster than you and beat you. So being first is not always an advantage. But it also goes against the concept of pioneering and innovation. So, if you have to be first, you have to be a pioneer, you have to innovate. Does it mean that pioneering and innovation is wrong? I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is there is an advantage to being first. But remember, there's a disadvantage to being first also. And hence, you have to time this, but again, you can't find out. That's exactly what I said. Sometimes you don't know. It's much later only that we realize that we were at least a decade ahead of time. But I do believe that if we had not done what we had done at that time, I don't think e-commerce would have moved so fast.
Okay.
somebody has to start.
Right. Okay. Vaitheeswaran, coming to your existing journey with the reference to again drinks.
Yeah.
Of course, I also placed order and we enjoyed the drink.
Wow.
We have to admit that fact. Okay. Now, having said all about, like, you need to understand the customer's problems, and you need to ensure that you are coming out with a superior solution to solve that problem. Now, if you look at again drinks, can you make a brief on that? How did you get into this kind of business, which is totally unrelated to your earlier businesses?
Okay, so that's a good question, Narayan. I'm going to answer this with two different things. You raised an important point. First is, a lot of entrepreneurs must note this. Many people start off their industry in, say, financial services, and then do a startup in fintech or financial services. Then they go into, or they're in software programming and start a software company, or they go into manufacturing company and start a manufacturing company. That's called domain knowledge and domain expertise. I have no problem with it. But I think for entrepreneurs, the important thing to understand is that domain knowledge has its advantages, but it has its limitations as well. In this specific case, I am clear that I always prefer to do a startup in an area that I have no idea about. The reason is, even if the business does not succeed, at least I would have learned something. So the one thing I was very clear now is I did not want to do another e-commerce startup. I was very clear, saying I'm done and dusted with e-commerce. I have no further interest.
Okay.
So when I came across this opportunity, one of the conditions that I put for myself in my next startup is that it must be a product startup as opposed to a service startup. All my earlier e-commerce, retail, they were all service startups. I want to do a product startup. Second, it must be a product that has never been done before. Third, it must be in an industry that I have no idea about. And fourth, there must be significant potential social impact. These four conditions I wanted to do, and this specific product met those conditions, so I started.
Okay.
Which brings me to the second part of the question you asked. How did we come across doing this? Let me talk about the problem and the solution that I spoke about. What we realized is that if you go to the market and pick up any beverage from a retail shelf, you'll realize that all beverages solve one of two problems. There are two problems for beverages. One problem is it's good for the customer, which means it's got no refined sugar, it's got no preservative, no color, no flavor. It's very good for the customer. So you drink it. The second problem is that the beverage does not require refrigeration. It can be stored in open shelves for long periods of time, let's say 90 days.
90 days, yeah.
And helps the business to do well because the cost of maintaining a cold chain and all of that is not there.
Okay.
But there is no beverage that solves both problems at the same time. So they either solve problem one or they solve problem two.
Okay.
So when I came across this, I said, it would be exciting if you can create a beverage that solves problem one and problem two at the same time.
Okay.
That's when we got working on this. And today, again, drinks, you had it, that's great.
Yeah.
It's the only drink in the whole world that has no refined sugar, has no preservative, no colors, no flavors, yet it does not require refrigeration and still has 90-day shelf life.
Okay.
So that's a reason we applied for a patent, and we've got a patent now for 20 years. So, just such an innovative product. But given the fact that we don't have any FMCG background, nobody would have believed that we'll do it, which is what I go back saying, domain expertise is important, but it's got its limitations.
Excellent, sir. But the so-called millennials as well the zillennials, normally they do look for something called fizz in the drinks, which is missing in again. How do you look at this scenario? Are you appealing to the youngsters, the zillennials, through your product?
I think we are, because slowly but steadily, a lot of people have realized that all aerated drinks, in fact, are not necessarily good from a health point of view.
Yeah.
And therefore, while you may be looking for fizz, It's not a very healthy feature to look for.
Okay.
So I know increasingly people are moving away from fizz, because fizz is generated only through chemical reactions, right? You can't generate fizz without having chemicals.
True.
And having chemicals in your beverage is fundamentally not good. So increasingly we are finding out that people are not necessarily looking for fizz and are looking for products that are more clean, which is what I meant, what is called a clean label product. And hence I do believe that increasingly we are appealing, and especially after the pandemic. After the pandemic, we've suddenly realized, in fact, the number of people who now come to our website, our e-commerce site, and order the product, and repeatedly ordering it's also very uniquely different. India, the taste in India is very different. People like only something which is sweet. And as you may have realized, it isn't very sweet. It's got enough natural sweetness, but it doesn't have the refined sugar that you put, right? Okay. And so it takes a couple of times and then people realize, okay, it doesn't have sugar, but it's really good for me. And hence, slowly but steadily, people are now beginning to like the product and repeat it. So I think we are certainly appealing to those audiences as well.
Excellent, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much. I will come back to you, sir, if time permits. Sir.
Sure.
If your time permits. Sriraman, over to you, please.
Yes, sir. Participants, if you would like to ask your questions, please raise your hand, or else you can use chat window also. So we have first question from Kalimuthu. Kalimuthu, you can ask your question.
Okay.
Kalimuthu, there is
thank you, sir. My question is,
I'm not able to hear.
Sir, I'm your.
Yeah, audible, Kalimuthu. Yes, Kalimuthu, continue.
Okay, sir. So, which type of ownership is based in order to start a startup business? Sir? Sole proprietorship or partnership? Sir?
Well, like I told you, it depends on whether you have a co-founder or not. If you have a co-founder, then you have a partnership, if not a sole proprietor. But I think in the modern age of young entrepreneurs, they do neither partnership nor they do sole proprietorship. Those are the kind of businesses that people used to start earlier. Today, almost everybody goes for a private limited company, irrespective of the number of co-founders. So if you do a modern startup, I don't think people do partnerships, unless it's a service like a chartered accountant firm or a legal firm or something. There are no partnerships and all that. Mostly it is private limited company. It's the safest model to follow.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Krishna Kumar, sir, you can ask your question.
Mr. Vaitheeswaran, a very interesting talk by you. My question is, as we normally discuss in all these B schools, the kind of rules that are being given for entrepreneurs to succeed, I have a feeling that too many of these rules try to scare away the entrepreneurship and take away the animal spirit in him. Do you agree with me? This is the first point. And my second question is that because in the earlier case, I always feel that people who decided faster instead of trying to satisfy many of these rules or tick boxes are the ones who really succeed. That is one. The second question is, I also want your views on what is necessarily a success. Is it really going for an IPO and selling off your shares, or is it just trying to say, okay, I grow, I make reasonable contribution, I provide employment to people, and I still succeed? I mean, we want your views on what being a successful entrepreneur is.
Okay, so let me answer both the questions. Both are very interesting. The first one, the reason I'm sharing these rules is not to scare away the entrepreneurs, but to make it, give them a sort of template for them to think properly and do critical thinking before they get ready to launch. Does it mean they have to think like this before they launch? No. Many, like you said, there are so many people who may not have thought about it and simply gone and launched, and there's nothing wrong with it. But if you're not keeping some of these things in mind, you may end up taking longer to succeed or end up failing. Now, for those people who you said, many of them actually succeeded without thinking about all this, possible, but they may have still met many of these conditions subconsciously without knowing it. In other words, they would have still solved a problem. The solution would have been superior to competition. All of that would have happened. They may not have thought about it. So all I'm trying to do is give them a template so that they think, instead of learning and spending a lot of time and money learning the hard way, it helps them start. But at the end of the day, starting is more important than thinking. So I agree with you, but sometimes a template helps. That's all. I'm not trying to scare people.
No, I think yours was a very, very practical. So far, I think I should say that your template was among the simplest, because I know of many people who talk trying to give too many rules and regulations are complicated, but yours was a very practical, down-to-earth approach. But beyond that, this was my question to you, sir. That is all.
Yeah, sure. The second thing is, what is success? Now, that's a very hard question, but it's more like a philosophical question, right? For some people, success is making a lot of money. For some people, creating employment, having a social impact. For some people, the fun of starting up and going ahead, and the ability to go down an entrepreneur as a journey, they're all different metrics of success. I don't have an answer as to what. So for me, the joy of trying something different, unique, certainly creating some employment, learning along the process are all elements. Now, does it mean I'm doing it in a very philosophical manner and saying I don't want the money? No, that's not true. In fact, I think it is important for an entrepreneur to also dream of making a lot of money. Because if an entrepreneur is not dreaming of making money, which means then she's not dreaming of creating value for herself, it is unlikely she will create value on the organization. So I'm not saying you should get philosophical and say, I'm just doing it for society and social good, and I'm not looking for money, because those kind of startups are unlikely to succeed. I think it is important for entrepreneurs to dream of succeeding financially, but it is not the only metric. There could be many other metrics. I don't have a better answer. This is because my definition of success, your definition of success will be totally different. And that's the way it should be. We can't have a financial metric for this.
Thank you so much. I think the creation of wealth for the society or for the country as a whole is as much important as making profits for our own self. But 100%. We need to have that drive to make money for ourselves, because that's the strongest driver for us to continue as entrepreneurs in spite of all the problems. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah. The only thing that I would add is that, and I missed that point while talking about things to keep in mind, but I think it's an equally important point. It's very important for all entrepreneurs to make sure that whatever happens, they must always conduct themselves with the highest standards of integrity. And if once you do that, you must focus on making money for yourself, because I suddenly realized a lot of entrepreneurs do make money, but they don't necessarily make it the right way. And that money is not good enough.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Mr. Akash, you can just introduce yourself and ask a question.
Yeah, hi sir. I am software engineer at Microsoft. So I recently connected with you. We talked on LinkedIn also. I have this question, sir. Companies like Zomato, Paytm, they are till IPO now, and they are still loss-making companies. They are burning a lot of cash. But one thing they created is they created a good value. They had done mindset shift. So previously, nobody used to order food online. Now everybody wants to order to Zomato because it gave convenience. But there, if you see profit-wise, it is not. It is still cash burning, and risk-wise also, now risk is shifted from investors to the customers now. Now customers are buying and selling their shares, and they are getting loss on that because that a share is not performing that well. So, sir, what is your view on this kind of thing? Is it your view on this, like, is it a good thing or this kind of startups, or how it is, sir?
So it is similar to the previous question. It depends on the definition of success. Companies like Paytm and Zomato, you said they've created a lot of value. I am not sure. They certainly created a lot of value for the founders and the founding team and for some of the employees. Yeah. But I'm not sure they created value for the organization. So they did something very unique. People are now ordering online, like you said. People are using digital payment methods. But if you're creating something innovative and unique and convenient for customers, but not able to create value for the organization which develops this innovation, then it is not worth it. I go back to the example of Apple, right? Apple created great convenience with the iPhone about swiping. But if they didn't make profit out of it, you wouldn't respect Apple, right? So I think at the end of the day, it is important for startups to create jobs, create convenience for customers, build value, but certainly make sure that they're a profitable organization. Some of them take time to become profitable, but sooner or later, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, you can't take 20 years to become profitable. Then that's not a smart startup. So in my view, I wouldn't agree that they've created a lot of value for the organization, certainly created value for the individuals.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Rajat, Raghu, you can ask your question.
Greetings, sir. Myself, Rajat Raghu. I'm pursuing my MBA at DJ Academy. So my question is, as a customer of Again Drinks, your specification of 90 days of shelf life was amazed me as well as made me worried, because is there any kind of harmful harmful things in this to keep it alive for 90 days without any cooling or something?
So Akash, that's exactly the reason we got the patent. The product has 90-day shelf life without preservative, without chemicals, without sugar, and without refrigeration. And hence we applied for a patent. So it's a very unique product. We use no chemicals. It's absolutely perfect for you. It's exactly the way you'd make a milkshake or a smoothie at home, right? Take milk, take yogurt, put dry fruits, put nuts, and drink it. That's it. Absolutely perfect. We add nothing to it. Zero chemicals.
Sir, but as we make the same product at our home, it just gets rotten within 2 to 3 days, keeping it outside. So that's what made me think of keeping it for 90 days. And how do you convince this to your customers?
Well, slowly but steadily, you have to explain. That's why we got the patent. So have you tasted the product?
Not yet, sir. Not yet. I would love to taste your product, definitely.
Yeah, you should just go to shop.againdrinks.com, order for yourself, taste it, and tell some friends. And decide for yourself whether it is good or not. I can tell you we don't add any chemicals.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir. Thank you.
Sir, it's going to be 4. Shall we take a few more questions, sir? Or?
Maybe 2 or 3 more. We can go for another few minutes.
Yeah,
maybe 5 minutes or something we can go.
Yes, sir. Anushri Murli, please introduce yourself and ask a question.
Hello, sir. My name is Anushri Murli. I run a natural nutrition startup myself. And I had come across your stories and quotes earlier, and it didn't strike me that you were the same person that I was reading about. In fact, your quotes about the beverage market going to boom in India was something that I had used very regularly. And only now I realized that you were the same person I was reading about. So my question to you is specific towards the consumer market in India. There is a quote that runs around saying that in India, everyone is their own nutritionist because they have their own opinions about what is healthy and what is not. So what is your opinion about the consumer's response towards health and nutrition? And do you see it going further? Do you see that they take more opinions of the companies, or how do you think that they form their opinions?
So India is a very unique country as far as health and nutrition is concerned. I think most consumers talk the talk, which means we all want to be healthy. We all want to be nutritious, but we don't walk the talk. It's a very rare country where people do jogging in the morning, they go for gyms, they sign up for subscription, they do Zumba in the evenings, they play badminton. And whenever there's a gap, they eat a samosa and a gulab jamun, right? So it's a very strange place. And hence, we are not able to, as Indians, we're not able to bring ourselves to lead a healthy lifestyle, and it's more convenient. But having said that, I see things are changing. The fact that more people today order our product knowing that it's a healthy product, more than what it was 3 years back. The numbers are still very small, but gives me hope that sooner or later people will shift to this. The challenge, I think, is there a way we can communicate to consumers in India how to read the food label? And I think that skill is not. The ability to tell customers, look for this in the label, avoid these words, look for these words. These are the dangerous things that are there. If they learn how to read labels, I think we will be stronger as a country. But things are certainly much better than what it was.
So that particular point is something that we wanted to emphasize itself with our company. Clean labeling is very important. And I feel that more and more people are becoming aware. The problem is the awareness is tilted here and there. So that is a very good point.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so
Shiraman? Yeah, Balaji, please. Balaji Srini.
Yes, sir. Sir, good evening. I'm Balaji S from LMW, working as a manager projects. That's a very nice talk, sir. I just have two questions. You have just explained the product should be the better, cheaper, faster, and competitive. In that, what is the order of preference? Actually, any two combinations will win the market. In that order of preference, one is. And next is early in the market will have a failure. Like, can you just elaborate on the topics?
Yeah, so the early part I've already answered somebody else's question about first mover advantage. I did mention that, you know, being first always is not advantage and sometimes a disadvantage, especially in the technology market. So let me answer the other question saying which of the two is important. I think it appeals to different markets. So for example, let me take the example I told you of having a tea shop, a small tea kada in Coimbatore. Outside, let's say LMW's factory, you put up a tea shop. Your tea can be better, and there are two tea shops already existing. You open a third one. Your tea has to be better than the other two. You should be able to serve tea faster to people who come because there's a lot of people coming out of the factory. It also has to be cheaper than the other two. Now, if you do all three, the other two will close and go. Because why will they continue? I mean, your tea is tasting better. You're able to serve it in exactly 1 minute. They're taking 5 minutes. And you're charging 2 rupees per tea. They're charging 10 rupees per tea. They will close and go. But typically, you'll be able to achieve only 2 of the 3. Now, if you do cheaper, you'll get an audience who can't afford 10 rupees per tea. They'll come to you because you're able to serve it faster and you're able to give it cheaper. But the people who are looking to pay a premium for great taste, right? Because you're putting inji, you're putting yelaka, they won't come to you because if you put all that, you can't serve it cheaper. So any two you pick, you'll pick a different audience. If you do all three, everybody will come to you, but it's very difficult. So which combination is better is for you to figure out. But each combination will get you a different set of customers.
Actually, it's related to the nature of the product and industry where we're serving it.
Yeah, because there are different customer bands are different.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, it's 4-5 going to be 4-5. Shall we wrap it up, sir? Or?
Yeah. You want to take one last question? I'm okay. One last question we can take.
Okay, sir. We'll take one last question. Yes, Darshan, you can ask a question.
Good afternoon, sir. Myself, Darshan. I am also a triply graduate from DJAME and I'm studying first year MBA in DJAME. Sir, I've seen many of my friends like after graduating, immediately they go begin a startup with their parents' money and they have failed, sir. And some have also established successful startups over the past 1 or 2 years, sir. So what will be your advice as a person in this field? What would you recommend, sir, to find a job and gain certain experience and then start a company, or just directly get into starting a company?
You know, it's a very individual style. My personal recommendation is that you must always work somewhere for a few years because it gives you an idea of how organizations work, how people interact with each other, how business is done, how an invoice is raised, how money is collected, how do you hire people. I mean, all of this you can't learn if you're fresh from college. So my advice would always be work for 2, 3, maybe 4 years and then do your startup. But it doesn't mean that there is anything wrong. You can come out of college and still start up and succeed. So it's a very individual thing. My personal advice is work somewhere before starting up.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Darshan. Yes. Sir, shall we wrap it up, sir? Shall I invite? Yes. Sure. Thank you, sir. Indeed, a wonderful session. Thanks for that. Now let me invite Dr. Nityanandan Devaraj, the Secretary of Coimbatore Management Association, to propose the vote of thanks.
Thanks, Professor. Dr. AGV, Ms. Vaitheeswaran, Speaker of the session, my dear participants, really a privilege to be part of this session. Though as a professional, I've been part of at least 5 large startups, starting as a greenfield projects. I'm yet to taste the same as an entrepreneur. So as an entrepreneur, this topic is of very significance and very close to my heart, I would say, not to the mind. I repeat, it's to the heart. So at some point of time, I would also like to pursue an entrepreneurial journey, though as a professional, I have had enough opportunities to realize those dreams. As Mr. Vaitheeswaran rightly put it across, entrepreneurial effort is a journey. You start somewhere, and then there is no end towards. It's a perpetual existence. Maybe as a person, the promoters may not exist, but organization should survive through the generations. That is the motive with which any organization is built. Having said that, there are many aspects, as rightly pointed out by Mr. Vaitheeswaran. The business process has to be understood, starting from the regulatory requirements, which is of paramount importance. Many of the startups have not been able to get the advantage what they're supposed to get, only because of the failure to address certain requirements of the regulations or probably statutory nature. So this is the first step, which probably B schools touch upon, and they don't teach in depth. So any entrepreneur in the domain, what he wants to start a business, needs to understand the requirements from the perspective of regulations. This is first step. Second, of course, though we all start up, sustainability comes in managing a very disciplined working capital. Because many a times when we want to scale up, we will not either be able to scale up to the level that is required by the market, or scale down when we anticipate a downturn in sales. So having said that, in the last couple of years, many startups could not derive advantage because of the situation-induced constraints. So many people have succeeded in the domain, depending upon the domain what they operated in. As rightly pointed out by Mr. Vaitheeswaran, I also subscribe to the view whenever I'm asked a question, when do we actually start? There has to be a distinction between self-employment and entrepreneurship. Though most of the times, entrepreneurial journey starts with self-employment, but unless otherwise, the magnitude of the business assures there is possibility of scaling up and multiplying the sales and revenues, the entrepreneurial journey remains self-employment. So that distinction has to be made, and we have to have probably not domain expertise, but an understanding of the business process, which comes out of gaining an experience. So depending upon personal capacity, it could be 1 year, 2 years, it could be 3 years, 4 years. But all of us should remember KFC was started by somebody at the age of 60 plus. And still it is a brand which is successful across the world. So there is no an age limit to become an entrepreneur. And it all depends on the ability to take risk and the wherewithal to continue the risk and sustain the risk and the business what we are into. By and large, it was a wonderful session, and happy to have been listening to you, Mr. Vaitheeswaran. And if the occasion permits, probably we should meet up in person and have a session in Coimbatore. On behalf of Coimbatore Management Association, on behalf of DJ Academy, may I extend a sincere thanks for you to having spared your valuable time and enlightening the participants today. Thank you so much. Thanks DJ Academy for co-hosting this event, Professor Nandi for conducting the event, Professor AGV for being the host for the evening. And thanks to all the participants, without whom the event will not be as successful as it is today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was a lovely program.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vaitheeswaran. We wish you very all the best. God bless
you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Congrats, AGV, for the well-conducted program.
Thank you, JR. Thank you, Nitin. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye. Have a nice weekend.
Weekend too.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.